Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Speak, Film, and Enter, a podcast where we review and rank movies. I'm Nate.
And I'm Dylan.
And I'm Adam.
Today we're reviewing, getting a little late to it, but finally here with the review for the latest MCU movie, Thor, Love and Thunder.
Yep.
Taika Waititi is back. I think this is what, MCU number 29? Like, I keep saying they should just, those should be the names for these movies.
Yeah. They should.
MCU number 29, Thor, Love and Thunder. That should be the official title.
Yep.
And most are back from the beloved Thor Ragnarok.
Yeah, most
Korg
characters.
is back. Valkyrie's back. We do not have Loki in this movie, which we can talk about a little bit, how that affects some Thor stuff. But also Jane Foster is back. Natalie Portman.
Yep.
Yeah.
Natalie Portman has returned. And Taika has returned to direct as well.
Mm-hmm.
So really quick, Adam, if people don't know what it's about, do you want to fill them in?
Absolutely. Thor enlists the help of Valkyrie, Korg, and ex-girlfriend Jane Foster to fight Gore the God Butcher, who intends to make the gods extinct. So it sounds, again, the world is falling apart. The universe is falling apart. Every god you can think of is going to die, potentially. That's what we're fighting. And it's the stakes. But
so before we get into it, I want to let people know that this will be a spoiler review. It's been out for a week. Everybody sees the MCU movies anyway, so I don't really feel like we need to hold anything back.
Yeah.
So that said, first impressions, first thoughts?
I would say I felt like it was kind of similar to when me and you went and saw Death of Stalin, where I went and saw it with a highly respected source who actually doesn't like Marvel movies at all. And we were laughing like the entire time. Like, I felt like we laughed more and harder than the rest of the theater combined. Like, I swear no one else in our row even had a reaction the entire movie. Like, I kept looking over like, are you guys asleep?
I actually
or just like maybe muted chuckles that you know.
I think I actually agree with that because the people in front of me didn't make noise either, and like we laughed.
Yeah, and I guess I just think like maybe I guess I went in kind of accepting and believing that this was supposed to be a comedy, like straight up, like not even serious really at all. And maybe that's why I liked it more, because I don't know if other people went in thinking it was going to be like, I don't know, like just a little more serious, like kind of more like Black Widow or like Shang-Chi, where it's like, yeah, there's jokes, but there's also like a real story here, and like, you know.
Yeah, I gotta get down to the nitty gritty.
Whereas I went in thinking it was almost like the 1966 Batman, where it's like, we are just here to have fun, and anybody who doesn't want to have fun can just leave.
Yeah,
and I don't know.
That's what Ragnarok was. Yeah,
I don't know. That's why I felt like I don't know. Maybe some people just went in with expecting something, and then being like, "Oh, this is just a bunch of jokes. Like this is like, bleh." Like
I
people
think
who
you're
are
onto
really
something
hating on
here.
it.
Because there's been pretty mixed reactions to this movie. I think it's one of the lowest rated MCU movies ever, or reviewed MCU movies ever. And I do think a lot of the criticisms I've seen of it have just been along the lines of like, it's too silly.
Yeah.
Or, you know, and I do think, I do think there are some fair criticisms of there being a lot of tonal shifts in this movie that don't always work.
Agreed.
I mean, Taika's done that before, particularly with Jojo Rabbit, and that's actually my biggest issue with Jojo Rabbit. It's a movie I really like, but the biggest problem I had was like it's silly right away, and then it's like generally kind of serious, albeit still kind of funny in the middle, and then and then he kind of tries to throw back some of that silliness toward the end, and I thought that kind of didn't quite fit.
Yeah,
and I think there are times here when the tonal shifts work, and I think there are times when it feels a little bit like they're trying to make two different movies almost. So I feel like I'm kind of falling somewhere between your reaction and the reactions of those around you. Yeah. Where I definitely laughed. There were times where I felt like jokes felt a little forced or didn't quite work for me, but I laughed more often than not. And some of the tonal shifts felt abrupt. But that said, there's a very serious scene in this movie, which I think is the best sequence or scene of any MCU Phase 4 movie so far, and that was the black and white sequence on that like, moon, wherever they were. I thought that
the
was
middle of the universe or whatever, the entity, or what did they call it?
Well, it was on their way there. They weren't there yet. I thought I felt the stakes of that scene more than any MCU movie since Far From Home.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I also thought what you were talking about, Adam, the very end at Eternity or whatever,
Eternity.
with the clouds and the water and the way that was. I also really liked that.
That was super cool.
But I also felt like it was like, whether it was serious or whether it was fun, it was like it almost felt like it depended on whether it was a Gore the God Butcher scene or if it was with Thor. It was like, we're with Thor and it's all like fun, and then it's like, Gore the God Butcher is miserable, and then fun.
There were some,
and then back to Gore.
The dichotomy, I think, helped it, but also, I mean,
there were some Jane Foster scenes that were very
true,
pressing as well. I mean, given that she has cancer in this movie and she's sick for, I don't know, like 15% of it.
But even in those scenes, like the hospital bed scene, like it gets serious, but there's still like 3 or 4 jokes and then the serious part, you know.
I just mean sometimes it feels like, I don't know. It didn't always work for me, the back and forth, but generally it did. I did enjoy myself. I don't think this is anywhere near as good as Ragnarok, but for the most part, I enjoyed this movie.
Well, and that's like, when we went into it, like watching it, I wasn't a huge fan of, like, the first 30 minutes are all basically like a recap of the MCU up to this point. It's like, no, trust me, if I'm seeing this movie, I've seen the rest of them. Like, I know what's going on. So I was kind of annoyed by that. And that, like, how Thor handles a lot of the first, like, I would say, like, hour, it's kind of like he's still very much in pain, but like is masking it in like a very obviously not great way. And I was really annoyed by that going in. And then I had to remind myself that, like, he has lost every single person, like, around him. So it makes sense that this isn't, like, he doesn't feel like himself or like that what we're used to in any of the other movies. I mean, especially after Endgame, when he's bro Thor, like drinking beer and had, you know, the long hair and the beer gut and stuff. It's like, oh yeah, that was a reaction to like trauma and pain, not just like, oh, I guess we're doing something different with the character. You know what I mean?
And losing his brother like over and over and over again, which I thought was a good point. And like losing all of Asgard. Yeah. I mean, Taika knows how to make a like a voiceover funny, but I will agree that it felt like the first 10 or 15 minutes were just kind of like recap, which is fine, but so I definitely agree with that.
Really quick aside thought on this, doesn't really have anything to do with anything, but
fire away.
So he brought back like Matt Damon for the Asgardian troupe.
Yes.
Was that not like the weirdest place in the world to like end a play?
Oh, I know.
It's like 15 minutes into Ragnarok.
I know.
And the play was over. And I was like, what? Why would people be applauding for this? It's like the biggest cliffhanger in the world.
So funny.
I know. And Melissa McCarthy.
Oh, yeah.
That was funny.
Oh, man. Who was the other actor? Who was the guy who played
I know his face.
Sure.
I can't remember. It's another brother. I think it's the other Hemsworth brother.
It was the last time, but I feel like it was somebody different this time.
I think it was this time because the only way I recognize him is from Westworld. Oh, he's in like season 1 of Westworld. I'm pretty sure it's the same guy, but I'd have to look. But I was trying to figure out who that was, and then just the rest of that like little cast was hilarious. So
there is another Hemsworth in this movie, but it's Chris Hemsworth's actual daughter, who plays Gore's daughter.
Oh, I did
who
not
he's
know
with
that.
At the end of the movie.
I did not know
they're
that.
teaming up and ready to fight some bad guys.
Okay, that's cool. That's an extra layer of kind of
so that was kind of fun. Yeah, I mean, I generally liked this, and like, that scene in the middle, kind of the black and white thing, I thought was amazing. I thought Christian Bale was the best part of this movie.
Sorry.
Yeah, for sure.
Every scene he was in, he just completely stole and captured my attention.
Yeah.
And I liked that he was just kind of they did a good job of having him be like Christian Bale changes his look more than like any other
physical
actor.
Form all the time.
And I like that they went with kind of like scrawny, like weak Christian Bale because I read this too, but the reason I think it works is because he's just like a corrupted dude, and we don't need him to like get jacked. He's like sad and kind of pathetic, and I like the look of him for that reason. And then Adam, what you're gonna say, I also read.
Yeah, there's an article that came out that Christian Bale said, I can't keep up with Chris Hemsworth's physique, so like I didn't even try. He was also like, he had just got done filming another movie and then was filming this like right away, so he didn't have time to do it. But like, there's no way you can catch up to what Hemsworth looks like. His arms are like the size of my waist. He's just a giant man. Like,
I feel like he almost went with like almost a Voldemort-esque kind of look. And I agree, Nate. I think like his as a villain, like, you know, he's a little bit like one note just as far as like what his motivation is, and that's okay. And I get that, like, it's not necessarily a layered character, but just like the look of him, and like you said, like every time he was on screen, like his presence, like I just think they nailed that. I love how everything with him is black and white and like sucks the color out of everything. Like that decision led to a lot of really cool visual things, and like with the fight scene when, you know, like everything's black and white except for Zeus's bolt, which is still gold, and this, which is still blue.
Or like,
and it gives you an idea of like
the blue light coming through. Yeah.
And it kind of gives you an idea of like the hierarchy of like the power that everyone is like trying to wield, you know, like
also like they're on his turf here.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah. And I thought that the things he was able to do, I thought the stuff with the sword, how he can kind of disappear and appear behind you, and also the stuff with like going into the ground and making those like monsters and shadow monsters appear. Like, I thought he was a really cool villain. Just his look, and like you said, every time he was on screen, it was like, oh yeah, like Christian Bale is like killing this. Like I kind of felt like I did with Spider-Man Far From Home with Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio, where it's like they just bring in this like big, like totally like, you know, top of his game actor to just do like a one-off fun, really lean into it, be the bad guy. Like it worked for me for sure.
I also think that helps too, because the Thor movies are some of the most colorful Marvel movies. Not that they all don't have a lot of color, but like even from like Ragnarok was a bunch of color. They've even added like the gold on Thor's new costume. Like they've really made stuff pop. And then you go right to that like monochromatic, and it was like, oh, this is really the contrast was really, really cool visually.
Yeah, totally agree with that. I guess there was one part of his like plan that felt kind of, I don't know, I didn't love the writing there with like kidnapping all the children just to like lure Thor to this place to steal something from Thor that he could have just stolen from him when they were fighting each other. Like, I don't know, that felt weird. And kind of, I didn't love that. It didn't distract too much, but I thought about it a little bit toward the end of the movie, and I was like, this plan is strange. I mean, like, I know why he wants this. That part of it makes sense. But the whole, like, kidnapping all the kids of Asgard to, like, lure Thor to steal his axe.
Yeah.
Like, I don't really get the purpose of that, but whatever. It didn't bother me too much.
And I also felt like just the very ending, like, you know, his whole thing is he wants to get to eternity so he can have, like, because it grants one wish. And I felt like almost like pretty early in the movie, I was like, well, yeah, he should use that wish to bring his daughter back. He should kill all the gods.
Kill everybody else. What are we doing here?
That almost, like, I don't know. So that was a kind of thing where I was like, does that logically?
That's where I get where there's some inconsistencies with this movie where sometimes I just kind of felt like that doesn't quite work, but it's fun and colorful and funny, so I generally don't care.
Yeah.
But if I'm like actually asked about, you know, were there some problems with this movie, I'd have to say like, well, yeah, there are a few.
Yeah, I think so. How'd you feel about Russell Crowe as Zeus?
I liked how stupid and silly they made it, because taking it seriously just, I feel like, wouldn't really have worked.
Yeah.
And especially because their whole thing is kind of like Taika likes to kind of humanize the gods or make them just seem ridiculous and like people who aren't necessarily to be taken very seriously. And or not, at least not all the time. Like, if they don't take it seriously, then we shouldn't care about them, is kind of how he views it, I think. And I really enjoyed the costume that they put him in.
Yes.
I think that allowed for some very fun, like, sort of physical humor, and just kind of the, like, how bombastic he was and just over the top.
And even the accent,
enjoyable.
Just an asshole.
I don't even know what the accent was, but it kind of worked for me.
Like, it was just
kind
foreign,
of Italian, but kind
foreign.
Of foreign, and like the first like couple sentences, I was like, oh my god, like that's what he's going with. But then like it worked as he just like kept leaning into it.
It kind of reminded me of, just from a sense of like feeling like somebody's doing an accent that doesn't really belong to any particular place, of the guy in The Fugitive.
Oh,
Dylan,
okay.
his doctor friend.
Yeah.
Where I was just like, where is this guy supposed to be from?
Yep. Or
Like,
even more recently, I kind of made me think of the Northmen, like the accents that they gave them.
Oh, sure.
Where it was just like, they're just different and like old.
Yeah,
Right.
it's just
Old
speak.
foreign speak. That's what that is. Like,
Yes, exactly.
You
It
start
was
like
funny.
a southern accent
I
and morph
generally,
into something else, and then morph into something else.
Yeah, I liked Russell Crowe's bit though.
Yeah.
Unless we have anything left on him. I mean, we haven't talked about Natalie Portman at all yet, and she's kind of the big, like she's back draw. She's kind of the co-star of this.
Yeah. And I felt like from the original Thor, which is forever ago now, it feels like distant history. I did feel like maybe her chemistry with Hemsworth wasn't always like necessarily the best. Like I felt like her character was a little flat, and I don't know. In this movie, I think she did a good job, but it also felt like maybe the chemistry. It just felt like everything else was so Taika, and then it was Natalie Portman kind of being more herself, which is kind of subtle and kind of quiet and kind of, I don't know. Like I liked her, but
yeah,
she's really good at like bottled rage and like kind of look like she has something inside that's bothering her.
Yeah,
but she's quiet outwardly, and that I agree. Where it just didn't quite gel with the Taika-ness of the rest of it, where it felt like we were getting her character from the first two Thor movies, like kind of unchanged, but then Thor has just been like drastically changed and amped up and like really embracing his comedic timing and just kind of the silliness of it. And it just sort of felt like mashing those two together. It felt like if you hadn't seen the other Thor movies, which they're kind of, I think that's the whole point of Korg's thing is Marvel realizing that like Thor Ragnarok is infinitely more popular than the first two Thor movies, and there are people who like Thor Ragnarok that don't even like the MCU. And so I think they needed to he wanted to find this way to kind of be like, here's this character who was in these other two movies that most people seem to not care about anymore, and a lot of people haven't even watched. So they did the Korg thing, which for the most part I think works. I think there could have been a little less of it. But it's just, it didn't feel like she fully made it into the rewriting of her character in the same way that Taika was able to achieve that with Thor in Ragnarok.
And if you hadn't seen the first two, you hadn't seen any of her character, and then she's dropped in here as like his long lost love, I feel like it's not that kind of
and it doesn't click fully because the characters feel like they're almost kind of in different versions of Thor movies. It almost felt like her character didn't quite realize how silly he had become.
That's a good way.
They're like in-universe explanation too. Is like, oh, they haven't seen each other since they broke up. After they go through that whole like explaining their relationship, so like it sort of makes sense. But it's also like eventually when they start to like get back together, you kind of want to see them vibe again, and you just don't.
It's just kind of that awkwardness the whole time
that persists, and that's probably the biggest thing that bothered me. But again, I had to. They pointed out in the movie, and I had to remind myself that like there's a lot of like damage that has gone on in their lives, in the characters' lives. So like, does that mean the movie was bad, or does that mean they did a good job of portraying that? You know.
And I will say, like, what she actually, the way her character is written, as far as like she has cancer, but when she has the axe or when she has the hammer, she's Thor, so she's like a superhero, but it's still like killing her and like shortening her life. Like, I liked that idea and that kind of like dilemma. And it definitely made you think. I mean, I felt like it made everybody think, like, what would I do in that situation? Would I live it up to the fullest and shorten my life, or would I try to go on chemo and not help save the world and not be a superhero? Like, you know. And I like that. Like, I feel like as far as plot wise, like what her character goes through and does and how it ends up, I felt like I like that. I think it's more of just almost the, like we've been talking about, the kind of chemistry that's hard to define, but you either know it when it's there or it feels a little flat. That was
her character journey is well written. I think it's
fantastic actually.
Yeah, it's just kind of how she meshed or didn't sometimes with Thor. That was kind of annoying. Did you guys have anything else? Or I did want to ask where this ranks for you in MCU Phase 4 movies, which I feel like we're just getting a continuous stream of like mediocrity.
Yeah.
Right now.
I want to say for me, God, it just feels, I think it's towards the top. It's this, Shang-Chi, and Spider-Man No Way Home. And like Spider-Man No Way Home is just surviving on fan service alone. Like it's not,
right.
We've talked about how hollow it is and how like, and it's almost like the further I get away from it, the less I like it. And then Shang-Chi, like I said when we reviewed it, I liked it. He felt like a natural, cool addition to the MCU. Agreed. And I feel like that's still my favorite of the Phase 4, and this is probably second, but not by a lot. It falls right in there with Spider-Man No Way Home and Black Widow, where it was good and I liked it, but it didn't feel, it felt like they were on a run there in Phase 3 where it was just like banger, banger,
absolutely.
Banger. I haven't really gotten that
absolutely were
from any of these. So yeah, probably second or third favorite from the Phase 4. How about you guys?
That's probably where I'd land too. But,
I'm kind of unlike most people or at least from what I've heard, where Black Widow seems to be like almost universally agreed upon in the general like MCU fandom to be the worst of Phase 4, which I don't agree with at all. I think personally it's my favorite of Phase 4 so far. Mm-hmm. And then I've got this and Shang-Chi as other two that I enjoyed. Shang-Chi is more just like, it's more just like a timing of a new origin story that kind of bothers me is the wrong word. It's just, I feel like it was placed in a moment in the MCU where I didn't want another origin story. Mm-hmm. It's like the movie itself, I think, is good and I really enjoyed it, but I just it sort of felt like, oh, there's like, we just came off this high of like 7 straight movies with the stakes getting raised and then leading into like Infinity War and Endgame and then like kind of the like closing Phase 3 with Far From Home. And then we just got like Shang-Chi, which had nothing to do with any of it, which isn't the movie's fault.
No. Yeah.
It's kind of like, oh, I kind of wanted to keep pushing forward. And this just feels like it's kind of over here.
We're kind of restarting again.
I feel like almost like Shang-Chi should have been if we're talking about the order of the Phase 4, Shang-Chi should have been like at the end, and it should have started with like Thor, Spider-Man, Black Widow, because then it's like you said, you've got the high of all that, and then kind of a slow comeback down to earth, and then hey, here's a new character which could be introduced like right before they all start meeting each other, and like maybe we start conjoining them. But I know what you mean, where it's like we have like throwing it back to Black Widow, and then a new character, and then we're throwing it back to Spider-Man, we're throwing it back to Doctor Strange,
Eternals, which we don't even remember.
Oh yeah, and that one is.
So I was going to mention that. I thought because they in here when they go to Eternity here, you see a couple of I cannot remember the name, but the Colossus or the Galactus or whatever. You see a couple of them. Celestials. Thank you. I'm like, we haven't touched those since Eternals. Like we still have to get back to those because they're like these super powerful beings that we can't destroy. And there's one stuck on Earth right now with like its hand in the ocean. Like we have to come back to this at some point. We haven't addressed it, so I'm interested to see what they do.
Biggest issue just with all of these though is there was so much momentum and clear focus in Phase 3. Where is this even going? The only thing that I've actually seen in MCU Phase 4 so far that made me feel like things were connected and kind of like an oh shit moment, this is big for everybody, was like the end of Loki.
Oh, yeah.
And that's a show.
And that's a show.
And like everything else has just kind of been, I mean, I've enjoyed some of the continuations with our older characters like Hawkeye and WandaVision, Captain America Winter Soldier or Falcon Winter Soldier. But it just feels like every one of these movies just kind of feels like they're sort of hanging out by themselves. And we're like 6 movies in now. And I still feel like I have no idea as like where any of these are going.
Yeah. But I mean, we're also not that far removed from this whole phase, but like looking back on Phase like 1, that was a lot of like random movies that didn't connect, and then all of a sudden they did in Avengers, and it was like,
but it's different once you've already connected everything and set up that expectation for the fan base of like everything's going to have this direction that it's going, and they haven't given me that feeling with a lot of these movies. Although this gives us good opportunity. I did really enjoy both of the post-credit scenes in this movie.
Yeah, I thought they were. I mean, I like the one with Zeus introducing Hercules,
Yeah.
who was played by the guy from Ted Lasso. So good for that guy.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I gotta remember who that was.
For real, no, he's great. And that's an interesting future villain, kind of like they've dropped a couple of these in the end credit scenes. Because wasn't there one? What was the one where the ending has like hints to like Black Adam or Black
Eternals.
Yeah,
or not
hints,
Black Adam, that Black Knight.
Black Knight. So that
Yeah.
hints to that. Now we have this hint to Hercules. And I thought those were cool. And then I thought it was just a totally nice little heartwarming thing that Natalie Portman's character gets into Valhalla at the end.
Yeah,
Nothing too
absolutely.
crazy. Just a nice
One, like,
little.
It was cool to
wholesome-
see it.
It was
Yeah,
cool to see it.
and to see Heimdall, that was cool again.
Yep.
Yeah, I liked him.
Yeah, there's an article I read or that I was reading that said like now that we've seen Valhalla and it's the MCU, there's a chance that like one or more of those people eventually returns in some capacity.
Well,
Like,
yeah.
maybe not like comes to life again, but like
No, I mean
some
if
sort of
we've
ethereal
established
spirit or something. Yeah,
if
Now
we've
there's gonna be, like,
established that
communication.
Valhalla is a place that you can
Mhm.
get to, I'm
Right.
sure at some point somebody will have to go there.
Yeah.
For some reason.
Yeah.
Which is like I think we've gotten a lot of, to your point before, Nate, that there's it feels like a lot of individual things that don't have a through line yet. I feel, or I hope, that with all of these like little interesting bits, Valhalla in this movie or stuff in like Multiverse of Madness, these little bits of information that we're going to get is at some point one movie is going to tie all of those little threads together, and it's going to pay off so well. I mean,
It could.
fingers
I hope
crossed.
so.
I trust Marvel at this point to do that
Mhm.
well, but
Mhm.
to your point, like if everything feels individual right now, it's going to be harder to do that or harder to please the fan base to
It's-
get to that point
and
or
who
like
knows
sell it as
when-
well.
Yeah,
Right.
who knows what the timeline is that they're thinking as far as
It's also
bringing it
just
all together.
so big at this point where it's hard to feel like any post-credit scene can impact everyone. Or even just getting those little hints of Thanos before we're just like, oh shit, look what's coming down the road.
Yeah.
But even if we get that now, it just feels like, oh, that's only going to affect like these three guys. You know, everything's so sprawled at this point, which they need to do something to pull it together. But
they do, and I am glad that in this movie we get a lot. We obviously get time travel because it's or not time travel. We get space travel, and we get
Yeah.
different worlds, and we get all this stuff. But I'm glad that we didn't get any multiverse stuff.
Yeah.
yes.
I was very happy to get a break from that.
Yeah. No like version of Thor where he and Jane stayed together.
Yeah, or like, oh well, Thor, if you do this, and then you get then you can go back to a version where she's still healthy, and
Yeah.
none of that. It was like
Very
no.
glad we didn't get that.
Yeah.
You guys want to get into the stars?
Yeah, I think so.
Sure thing. We'll be right back with our star ratings.
All right. Who wants to go first?
I can go first.
Go for it.
I'm going to give this a 3 out of 5.
Good.
I enjoyed myself. Definitely not up to the level of some of the great MCU movies like Black Panther,
Ragnarok.
Winter Soldier,
Ragnarok,
Civil
Winter
War,
Soldier.
Ragnarok,
Mm-hmm.
some multiples of the Avengers movies.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
But definitely my favorite since Shang-Chi. I mean, I did not like No Way Home, Eternals, or Multiverse
Doctor
of
Strange.
Madness. So
Yeah.
it was nice to at least leave one with a positive feeling for the first time in like 10 months,
Yeah.
roughly.
Mhm.
So, and especially being kind of lukewarm on like Moon Knight, like it had been kind of a, like I said, like a steady stream of mediocre to bad for me for a
Mhm.
while. So 3 stars. I didn't love it, but I liked it. And I'm glad I just saw something that didn't leave me feeling like the MCU was doomed.
Yep.
That's fair.
Agreed.
I can go next if you'd like.
Go for it.
I'm also going to give this 3 stars, 3 out of 5. I liked it. I felt like it was a little awkward. Like some of the humor, which was good because I laughed at a lot of stuff, but a lot of the like interaction between characters was really strange
Forced
and I was
sometimes.
forced, and I was like, this isn't Taika. So I almost felt like, is this a George Lucas situation where Taika just had a vision in Ragnarok and it worked, and he's trying to do it again, and no one's telling him no?
Or
Like,
he got kind of free reign to
yeah, and
do
I
it
was
his
like,
way.
is it that, or is it just like, was that the story he wanted and it's actually working, and I just can't tell?
I think he just tried to do a little too much.
That's what I mean. Like,
Mhm.
and I got kind of like, oh, well, that sucks. But
Yeah,
it's not the worst Thor movie, which is also
He's
like,
getting
there's
shit
story
on a
now.
lot.
I
Taika?
know. Yeah, people are saying like, oh, finally, like the end of Taika, or like it's about
think-
time Taika. Like,
I think we're just like some oversaturation
Maybe.
because like
Yeah.
he was just in Free Guy. He was in he just had his HBO show, Our Flag Means Death.
Mhm.
Reservation Dogs, which he like produced and has been involved in on Hulu, has been out. Like he's
What We Do in the Shadows.
He showed up in something else too, like some other movie or something recent.
Oh,
Oh, he
yeah,
was
he
a
had
voice in Lightyear.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's just like everywhere right now, and I feel like with such a steady stream of mediocre MCU movies, like eventually one of these directors was gonna take the heat for it, and people actually know who Taika is.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like
And his
way
brand
more
of
than
humor and stuff and
way
all
more
of
than
that.
like Sam Raimi. Like
Yeah.
movie people know who Sam Raimi is very well. But
But-
like the general public, like Taika's huge.
They're like, oh, it's
And
that
I-
New Zealand guy.
Right. And I just think we've gotten a lot of Taika and a lot of mediocre MCU movies in a row, and I just think it was kind of the convergence of that.
Yeah. So like
Mhm.
that hit me, but then I enjoyed the storyline. I thought the goat boat was dumb at the beginning and ended up really loving it. So
Oh,
like
God.
I knew it would,
The
I knew it
goat.
would come back
Space
around.
Goats.
Space
Man,
goat.
the goats, they went full circle for me. Like the first couple times they made me laugh, and then there were a few times after that where I was like, "Oh man, they're gonna run this into the ground. This isn't funny anymore." And then they kept doing it, and it made me laugh again. And I was just
Yep,
like, "God
yep.
damn it!" Like it went full circle for me on the
Goat
goats.
boat
Yeah.
coast to coast. Like it worked
Because
out.
it was just the little, like, I think the one that got me real bad was when who's the rock dude? I can never. We were just talking.
Korg.
Korg. When Korg gets kind of obliterated and it's just
Yeah.
like
Oh,
his
yeah.
face, and the
they
goat
pick
goes
him
to
up.
pick him up, and there's just a little, just a tiny scream. It was just like I didn't see it coming, and it's just like, God damn it, Taika! Like your timing is just always so fucking good.
The humor is great. Yeah, 3
yeah.
stars. It was just there's little bits like that all throughout his movies, and that's always like saving. And always if there's something that lacks in another area, the humor makes up for it. So 3 stars for me.
Yep. All right, nice. And for me, I'm just going to go slightly higher. I'm going to give this a 3.5. Maybe it was just because I feel like I need to stick it to all the lame-os squares who I saw this movie with, an entire theater of just like, oh, it's a Thursday night and I want something serious and this is just too silly. Like, God, you guys, like, come on. I thought it was funny. Everything we talked about, like, I feel like it feels like a letdown because of coming from Ragnarok and coming from just Taika really did have an incredible stretch there, and kind of I feel like people were thirsty for like they wanted Ragnarok again. They wanted that feeling and that high and that like, wow, what a put together beautiful fun movie, and all they kind of got was a fun movie, maybe not put together as and it doesn't have Cate Blanchett, and she always elevates everything. But
and no Loki as well either, which
no
I
Loki.
think that also it really it made this movie feel like thinner to me.
And no Odin,
there's less mischief
or
and
no Odin or no like the other his mom or right like Ragnarok had it. You were really diving into like the royal family and their history, and all the stakes felt personal. And I feel like he went for a lot. He definitely maybe tried to do too much, but like a letdown from Taika is still not a bad movie. Like I just think people are hating on it because they wanted greatness and it's not great. So they're like, God, this is more MCU garbage. But I had a fun time. I loved how it looked. Like I said, I think Gore the God Butcher was a fantastic villain.
Yeah,
just a one-off. Like good for Christian Bale. I just loved the way he looked, the way he fought, his powers, all that. And then last thing I would say is a lot of the jokes. They did get me, especially the joke with like him wanting Mjolnir and Stormbreaker being like jealous. And like that was like, it was stupid, but it was such a classic Taika thing to be like, oh, I bet I could find a funny angle here, and then really lean into it and just like, I don't know, when it's leading the ship and he walks up to it and he's like, we're still cool, right? Like, come on. He kind of scratches it. Like, oh my God, dude, I was dying. But yeah, so I'm going to give it a 3.5. I thought it was very good. Mostly just fun and aesthetic and maybe a little style over substance, but I didn't mind it. So 3.5 out of 5 for me.
That's solid.
All right. And whose turn is it to put a wrap on the show?
It's Adam. So Adam, I'll do the outro stuff this time.
Gotcha.
All right, take it away.
Another day, another Doug.